All right, first, I don't have any fancy editing equipment. And secondly, this is going to be another basically live video. I'm in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone coverage. I'm deep in Dogman country. So we're going to talk for a few minutes about the Dogman and the things I've learned. If you watched the previous video, you know I'm a student of George Hansen. And forgive the shaking camera, it's cold out here. So anyway, I am in a location which is just down the road from a house that was actually featured on Monster Quest many years ago, where a college student had his car pursued by what appeared to be Dogman. And also, as far as I could tell from accounts, this may be very close to where Linda Godfrey had her own sighting when she talked about the large wolf going behind the sign. I wasn't able to verify that with her or locate the exact location. But years ago, there was a group of paranormal hunters that were about an hour away, and they would come up here and hunt the Dogman. And they had some very alarming encounters, including seeing what appeared to be an upright gray wolf behind a tree. They would post to an old site called Land of the Devil. I don't know what happened to all of that, but they were coming up here, and I was able to follow the clues, which eventually led me actually to a location that I had been many years earlier after high school. We were hunting reports of these giant footprints turning up in people's gardens. So famously here, we're a short distance away from a location, and I want to try to be a bit discreet here given its nature, but there are a lot of people in these liminal anti-structure states, right? So again, the phenomena that is happening fits right with George Hansen's model, right? If you think about this kind of from the Twin Peaks standpoint of Garmin Bozia, or there might be this emotional food or this kind of states that allow this to happen. I am not in the camp of some of the people you see on Facebook who were talking about Dogman breeding populations. I'm probably the furthest away from that you could get, right? Whatever this is, it's the mask that it wears when we see it. I think of it more like an old school portal guardian, if that makes any sense, from fairy lore. You know, something much older. It's been here for a very long time. The feeling is palpable as a sensitive, and I brought other people here who were like, what is that feeling? Remarkably, this is right next to an area with some tree blowdown. So again, the old idea of the Fae travel in a whirlwind is kind of important here. You could kind of pick the tree damage out in some of the places I've been that have this kind of paranormal vibe to them, or where sightings are seen, and then look at the tree damage. So kind of another one of those synchronistic tie-ins that I found peculiar. So anyway, years ago, I was with a friend of mine who was also sensitive. He was somebody that could see right through people, had many visions of the future, and we went riding along with another person who was also a sensitive, and we came out here and we were looking for the Dogman, right? It's the basic idea. And so bizarrely, we had a very strange run-in. We were driving down one of the roads near this location and come across what appeared to be an extremely enormous deer sitting on its butt like a human in a ditch, and it had very long ears, very long. I put my phone out the window at the time and tried to take a picture of it, and those pictures did not come out. All of the pictures, interestingly, were blurry, and we were not very far away from it. I would say maybe 10 or 15 feet. Like, we were driving down the road. I said, oh my God, what is that? That is not a deer. And why is it sitting like a human? And so I fired those pictures. Nothing happened. Here's the interesting part. So we drive, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes away, go home, and we're sitting in the kitchen talking about all of this, and we're like, hey, we should go back. That was a really weird event that we had. Like, what was that thing sitting in the ditch? That was not a deer. It didn't quite look like a wolf either. And so we were talking about this, and I have an entryway that makes a very unique sound. It's very airtight, so when you open the door, it makes this sucking sound, this whoosh kind of thing. So we're sitting there talking about coming back out here, and we hear that locked door in the side of the entryway open up and close. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, I think we're just going to stay home and leave whatever this is alone. And so that's what we did. You know, some things you don't mess with. Like, I can feel the energy here now. This is not, whatever it is not something that you want to trifle with. I'm here simply to share the story, and I try to mostly leave it alone, whatever it is. What is also remarkable is there's another synchronicity involved here, is that I bought a home from the gentleman that was in the car with me, right? When we had this sighting. So we would find out that there was this missing strip of like 8 feet in the middle of the lower garage. It had unexplainably disappeared. And in front of this house is another house, and actually the lady that lived there before she sold it to the current owners did my same job. I wound up taking over her job basically when we started a new business. And so we were chasing this 8 feet missing out of the garage. And lo and behold, the old owners actually lived on Wendigo Lane. And you're like, okay, that's funny, right? Here's the punchline. The people that own that house, that own the house in front of mine, are actually maybe a mile or less away from where I'm standing. So those people that live in front of the garage, or well, at least own the home in front of the garage, that had a piece of it in Wendigo Lane, actually live in Dogman country. And so there are these weird tie-ins that go on with these kinds of things, right? The peculiarity, high strangeness, whatever you want to call it. And so that cabin that was on Monster Quince is just, I can see it from where I'm standing right now. And right next to it is a tree blowdown area. And as another, like, I've had more than one Dogman sighting, or what you would call that. Years ago, I was in my dad's house and we were playing Vampires the Masquerade of all things, right? Role playing. We were kids and it's like, oh yeah, wow, we're gonna be vampires and werewolves, right? So we all got in the car and we pulled around, and he had this big open space right next to the house. And we saw something, so I turned the lights of the car over and we kind of drove towards it. And here's this thing that looked like a baby deer that had a wolf's head on it. It was like, if you imagine, like if a werewolf was turning into a baby deer or vice versa. I know it sounds crazy. 4 people in the car saw it, and it just stepped out of the shadow of the headlights and was gone. This is noteworthy again to me because is the phenomena just wearing a mask or what we expect it to be, right? Are people seeing the Dogman here because that's what they expect? Well, in this case, you had a bunch of impressionable kids in the home role-playing come out, and here's half baby deer, half wolf, the most illogical, bizarre thing ever, right? So very likely doesn't exist in the normal way that you would think it would. And I'm also in the area here about 5 miles south of me. Here is another location where some friends of mine were out in the woods, and they had a very serious time dilation event and couldn't seem to get out of the woods. They it's kind of like a hall of mirrors that they were trapped in. And there was this large upright creature again shadowing them. So interestingly, now here we have the Dogman and time dilation. So we're more back to, more of the old school traditional Fae explanation. And if you're familiar with the work of Jacques Vallée and Passport to Mangonia, this will start to make a lot more sense again, right? And it's not something that everybody's going to grok, but I highly recommend everybody go out and get the Trickster book by George Hansen and Passport to Mangonia by Jacques Vallée, because it is very useful in dealing with these kinds of things. I'm so grateful for Jeremy and Jeff at Paratopia for introducing me to these concepts years ago and getting me up to speed on them. Those 2 guys really changed the way I looked at this. Well, actually 3 counting George. And so it's just, here's some food for thought on what we would traditionally think of as this upright, canid werewolf type creature. And I have been in groups on Facebook when I had Facebook, and I haven't had that in a long time, where they're pontificating about breeding populations, and I'm trying to tell them, you don't understand, it's a lot weirder than that. So anyway, I hope this was helpful to someone or might be useful.